Welcome back to another session. Today I have with me the founder of Line Product and my partner Philip Cutting, and we would be exploring today how global conflicts, different wars which are going on, especially in the Middle East, and for years we have been around to see stuff going on in Russia and Ukraine. So we would actually talk about it, how it's affecting lives, businesses, and how it's affecting tech all around the world. So we would be discussing case studies, giving our own, you can say, uh, overview suggestions, how you could actually tackle that, and what needs to be done in order to avoid the hurdles and issues that you might face when you face these issues during conflicts.
Thanks, Daniel. It's great to be here. And yeah, 2025 is really shaping up and proving that you can't separate geopolitics, trade, technology, and we have to start looking at sanctions and not just how we can handle our physical and digital product delivery, but how to have a larger picture of even the technical and digital landscaping. So I'm excited to have some fun on this topic today and really dive in, see your thoughts on this, and see how we can make companies a bit more resilient in today's complex environment, and to see help people see if they have fragile systems currently. So it's one thing if it's a startup, right? We understand you guys. There's some things you still can do, but if you're a more mature company right now, you need to really have this buzz in your head on how to protect yourself if something in your value chain becomes burdened.
Mhm. Yeah, it's about also from the experiences that we have and how we see things happening around us in different markets and how can we predict those. So, for some companies that could be like the first time they have to like go through like scenarios like this, they might not have considered them, or even you can say they might have actually they might not have it on their list.
Yep.
But a different in tech, when you're building an app, we do have some sort of testing, and then we have some sort of we do stress tests. We push the apps to the limits, and we consider all edge case scenarios. But wars are something that you cannot predict, you cannot prepare for.
You don't expect war to affect your business, right? Like,
Yeah.
seriously.
Yeah, if we are building an app, really we would, we both would actually consider what happens if a war starts and we have missiles in the air, internet is broken down. So, that's like a very rare case. Starting with the most hot, I think, conflict that has ended, but it's still very fresh, is Iran versus Israel. So, in this conflict, things have been changing very drastically, and different businesses. What I have heard and I have saw online on different platforms, they have been through a lot of stuff. And specifically, the first thing that happens is the airspace gets shuts down, and then there is lag in internet. So people, and all the tech industry is like highly reliable on internet. So what's your take on it, that if you have some you might know people living in those regions who have
Mhm.
successful businesses and applications, have they shared some stuff with you, or like, just if not, what kind of information have you been able to go through in these days related to these conflicts?
So it's interesting. There's been times when we've had reports of systems being down or payments not going through, all kinds of like sporadic stuff, right? And you try to chase it down, and it's just like phantom problems. But
Mhm.
later on, you kind of listen to the news and you put two and two together. Like, okay, cool. There was this line of communication. that was perhaps bombarded a little bit by some naval ship or something like that. There's little things you wouldn't expect that are affecting people around the world. So we're used to, and we're not used to it, right? As tech guys, we don't expect something that in India or in
Yeah.
Iran or in the Straits of Hormuz or in Israel, right, to really affect the world. But depending on how the data is being transferred back and forth, and where you have your own region set up, you can be affected in strange ways. So the we have to start really looking at where our data is, well,
Mm-hmm.
where our users are, how data is moving back and forth, and kind of mapping
Mm-hmm.
what other countries' backup plans are and how it's kind of affecting us.
Mm-hmm.
So like there's no way in the world until recently out of like, okay, problems in Iran are never going to affect American companies, right?
Mm-hmm.
But we do have a lot of European customers, right?
Yeah.
And what you see is that different countries are trying to shift their load, and the internet is trying to redirect its routing. So when one thing gets affected,
It's
server routers are redirecting the flow from different servers around the world, and
mm-hmm.
it's surprising how these changes of routes can affect you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that is like slightly off topic, but do you think like different compliance like GDPR compliance that we are usually very much used to work with applications, and recently a project we did for Switzerland,
Mhm.
we were really considering these things that related to compliance and stuff related to
Uh-huh.
data. So based on these conflicts, do you think that these rules and regulations are going to get like a bit more strict in terms of data privacy and stuff? So
Mhm.
already they have, these regulations play like a very crucial role. But what I think, with conflicts going on so frequently, we might see in coming future that these regulations and stuff are could be like changed or amended in a way that the businesses can actually be more prepared, and people's data, people's information is more secure.
Mhm. Yeah, it's a good question. I'd assume that there is going to be probably some leans towards nationalism
Mm-hmm.
and countries enforcing some laws to try to protect their citizens.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, we've seen in the Senate, companies are looking to sell like 23andMe, right? They're recently on the news, and they're because they were looking to not sell their data, but another company looking to buy them and acquire that data, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it's essentially they're selling their data to another pharmaceutical company, and they're getting it under the disguise of buying the company.
Mm-hmm.
But you have these kind of conflicts, and countries are like, hey, no, those are my citizens information, and your terms of policy said this is private data, and all of a sudden now it's
Mm-hmm.
not. Right now you can use all this trickery and all these loopholes to give away that data or to sell that data, but we're not going to have it. Right, we're not going to stand for this. So countries are going to start more and more being picky about how they deal with that data. A lot of countries are very sensitive to, hey, do you store sensitive kinds of information inside our countries or inside our zone, right? I kind of still look at things in zones, like the Eurozone, the United States as a national zone. Maybe BRICS would become another kind of zone.
Mm-hmm.
The All these kind of different areas, it's it's actually nowadays easy enough for us to separate out the data structures so
Mm-hmm.
that we have our central systems, but we decentralize the data. So we keep all of our European data or European clients' data there in Europe, and the Americans can have theirs in Chicago or North Carolina, or whatever the East Coast zone is, or the West Coast zones, right? Or Ireland, right? There's some big server farms for AWS in Ireland. I think both Azure also has some
Mm-hmm.
zones around Ireland and the UK.
Mm-hmm.
So when you start to look at it, right, you can already say, hey, look, there's kind of this drive to be more secure, to keep data in certain places, and
Mm-hmm.
it's pretty healthy in a lot of ways, because if you can put a wall between data and how it's accessed, then
Mm-hmm.
you kind of just help your own security. And of course, you have better ping rates and less latency and more resilience.
Mm-hmm.
um, Now maybe it gets a little complicated on how you back up that data. If you're like an American company and you have these UK companies,
Mm-hmm.
great, you have your servers there in that region, but are you doing downloads? How are you securing those downloads that you do locally, just to protect yourself, right? Because you need to be able to pull that up. It's good to have that
Mm-hmm.
physical download. It's good to have those on-site downloads. If you're using Planet Scale, for example,
Mm-hmm.
Planet Scale, for those who aren't familiar, is just a big database provider,
Mm-hmm.
and it's exterior to AWS. Even is it Planet Scale built on AWS? Do you know?
I don't think so. We have used it in our recent projects too, but I never explored that angle that it belongs to AWS or not.
If somebody in the audience knows, throw that up. I can search it later, but
Yeah,
I don't want to
someone
search right now.
GPT and type in the comments.
Right. That's a great question for the audience, guys. I know somebody who's listening knows.
Yeah.
Uh, but it's now easy to do that. Just there's just a little extra thought process that you have to
Mm-hmm.
put into it that we're not kind of used to. And I get it if you're a startup and you're just kind of proving your MVP, where you're at the very early stage of trying to prove the proof of concept, right? Maybe it's a little bit too early then to be seriously thinking about it. But at some point, you need to start saying, hey, does our architecture handle this kind of move? And what would it take to start uh, taking on these steps to do that? How's it going to help us with compliance? How's it going to help us with our marketing?
Mm-hmm.
Right? I think right now there's a big move for nationalism. And I don't
Mm-hmm.
know anybody, even people that don't believe in nationalism, that's not going to feel more confident about having their data protected in a way that's localized to them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And
So
mhm. Yeah, related to nationalism, just like a quick take. When the first missile comes in, everyone becomes like a nationalist.
yeah, right. It's
So
you,
that's
you don't care about data or the internet until you can't access it.
yeah, yeah. And also related to your take on decentralizing the stuff. I actually when I looked into it and I got some more information about from Iran and also from Israel. What I felt is people or like nations might follow what China has done related to tech. They have like most of their applications actually they have their
Required to
own
be right there locally.
yeah.
Yeah.
So, I was actually going through some news in which the government advised the Irani nationals to stop using like WhatsApp, Facebook, Instagram, and they actually disrupted the whole internet supply too. Because if, these companies are like owned by your rivals, then you have that risk of your data being used in a way that could be harmful, and even in tracking you down on your location, or
Yeah.
even one thing that is very much important is the public perception. So what public is actually feeling, that is something leaders are also very much they care about that sentiment, and based on that they take decisions. So if you can use that data from Facebook, WhatsApp, or any social channels to get get some knowledge about that public sentiment, then you can take decisions that are you can get ahead. I think you can get steps ahead of your rivals. So countries in the world, there haven't been, I think, in the last uh, 5 years. Before that, there wasn't like major conflicts. There was some in the early 2000s, but at least for a decade or two. So I think countries might start paying more attention to doing keeping these applications, making their own applications, their data centers and stuff, so
Mm-hmm.
they are like more secure in terms of conflicts like this.
Yeah. Excuse me. Sorry, guys. Um, well, funny example exactly on this. 2016 elections in the states, we discovered how powerful social media was
Mm-hmm.
in a large national way, right?
Mm-hmm.
We saw
Yeah.
how it swayed the election with
Mm-hmm.
Trump
And there
versus
was,
Hillary.
sorry to cut you out. There was like a company to Cambridge Analytica who
Yep.
actually were very much specifically in spotlight due to this.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah. Because exactly they're selling a lot of information, and
Mm-hmm.
if they did it for Hillary, then nobody would have cared. But they did it for
Mm-hmm.
Trump, so good job. Uh, and I think even before then, China was way ahead of us in
Mm-hmm.
realizing the power of a social credit score, of
Yeah.
monitoring, of controlling that data. It's been, I don't know when China started its policy to house its own data, but I think
Mm-hmm.
it's been a long term kind of philosophy. And I don't know if they've weaponized it at all. I
Mm-hmm.
assume to some degree they maybe have or have the ability to do so.
Mm-hmm.
And because of that, and just the realization of the power of it,
Mm-hmm.
we have to kind of consider it. We have to deal with this world. We're in it now, and everybody knows it. Um, and look at what they did to TikTok, right? I don't
Yeah.
know what's happening as far as their TikTok being forced to sell or not, but I know like a year ago that was a hot topic.
Yeah. And also, I think with things, and that was, as you mentioned about China, they actually saw this coming in a way that I think in terms of, they are moving more towards having independence in terms of production, and also in terms, they are getting better at technology too, and they are really good in reverse engineering.
Yeah,
Once you give them,
they've always been. Yeah,
yeah,
no, they've always been really good, right? I don't know,
broken, they actually reverse engineer it and then they.
right? DeepSeek, Bravo guys, and they're open sourcing it, right? Which is maybe the part that's making the whole world angry with them.
Yeah,
How can you solve this hard problem that we can't, and just give it away for free? I hate you, China, for being so lovely and sharing the wisdom, right?
yeah.
Yeah, rar. Um, I don't hate anybody, but it's cool, and we saw the effect of DeepSeek on our market. It wiped out $1 trillion of investment, essentially. People panicked, and fake money disappeared, which kind of tells you how you should kind of consider what you're investing in. But that
Mhm,
said, how does this circle back to how we build an architecture, right? If we're dealing with China or our
mhm,
clients in China, we know they have these geopolitical requirements. We plan for that, but
mhm,
do we start out there, right? If we're working with a startup, at what point do we say, okay, cool, now we've built the system, we've used best practices, you're making some sales. I don't know if you're making money yet, but you're making some sales. You have not 100, not 1,000, not 10,000, but maybe 50 or 100,000 customers. And what's the risk to you of having an interruption? Or if France says, hey, if your data is not maintained in the EU, we're going to block you from all of Europe.
mhm,
And I can see this happening, right? And then if France says, "Yeah, cool," right, and then Germany is going to do it, and then all the other nations in the area, and of course everybody else in the world is going to say, "Well, if they're going to do it, I'm going to do it too," right? Kind of
mhm,
like when bad laws happen in California, they tend to spread. So
mhm. Yeah,
I'm
that
not saying these are
fear of
bad laws.
we might get affected by it too.
Yeah, yeah, right.
Mhm,
So there in Lahore, you'll be affected. The
mhm,
it's it's interesting how things can spread and how you kind of have to keep your eye open to the news and what's going on.
mhm.
But I see
Yeah,
there's some questions in the chat.
mhm. Yeah, I would be moving towards these questions to just like
All right,
quick
cool.
before we move towards question. You mentioned about architecture and also about how we could companies could be more prepared. So if we compare two companies, one is like the one who actually they made those changes or like those improvements, or they addressed the threat after
Mhm.
it was hit, and there is one company which was more prepared.
Yep.
So just want to compare these two because the competition in the market is so much that if you are out of business and that things get spread, that means that gives you a hit which takes like a lot of time to recover.
It's
So
super hard to recover from this kind of incident.
yeah.
Um, and in fact, it's sometimes you can't recover
Hmm.
because if when the competition is tight and you gain that reputation of your company being hacked or that your system is fragile or you name it, right? Um, I used to love Square D as a provider for internet for credit card processing.
Hmm.
Beautiful company. They pioneered a lot of work in the industry. They made it great for developers. Very beautiful system. Credit card processing, great for developers. But they became too conservative with who they kicked off their platform. And they would just kick people off and ruin their businesses.
Hmm.
So Stripe was a little bit more liberal on that. They had some more assurance on it. They had some health checking, right? They had better processes that made it so that if you're kind of looking at like something's going to happen in that direction, you could kind of recover yourself a little bit. And they had fewer stories of just being kicked off.
Hmm.
So a lot of people started using Stripe, myself included. And
Hmm.
now they're the market leader. And
Yeah.
Square D still actually has a better product. They're now more liberal on how they, how they, who they do credit card processing for, but they've never made that ground back.
Hmm.
And they were a
Yeah.
leader at one point.
Hmm. Yeah. If you lose, it's about if you lose the market, your market share, it's hard to get back until unless you have something very unique or something that adds substantial value in a way that your competition is not offering. If you are offering similar services, that becomes like a because for big companies, they can have large investments coming in, and with those investments, pricing is not going to be an issue. Uh, just to reference it to like a podcast I was going through for the founder of the Hotmail, he met with Bill Gates before selling it out, and Bill Gates actually said it to him that we should find ways to work together. Otherwise, we also like to build good software. so,
Isn't
so
that the truth?
yeah. So
Shamir asked a question like, what technology and frameworks are good for this? And Daniel just said something that kind of came to mind. And it's Cloudflare is one of those systems that are pretty popular for trying to kind of protect yourself from DNS, from changes, DNS attacks, right? Problems that would affect how your internet is routed to different services. Have you? What's your experience with Cloudflare, Daniel? What do you think about it?
I think I have used Cloudflare, but to be honest, uh, I don't have that much extensive knowledge about it. Uh,
It's a big system.
yeah, it's a big system, and it has, I think from the information and knowledge I have about it, in some terms, it's like a market leader too, but you can shed some more light on it.
So you've used it a little bit. I've seen you use it on a project,
Mm-hmm.
and it's one of those systems where the more you dig into it, kind of the better it is. Now you can do all that stuff that Cloudflare does
Mm-hmm.
just with good management and having a pretty good server guy in there.
Mm-hmm.
But Cloudflare just makes it easier. So there's a number of tools out there for monitoring, for helping you manage data and recognizing risks. AWS has a number of built-in tools,
Yeah.
and if you're using Elastic Beanstalk
Mm-hmm.
with AWS, they have that. I'm drawing a blank, but like a cloud monitor on there. That's a great tool to use to help you keep abreast of what's going on.
Mm-hmm.
and you can do a lot with the load balancers. But it's important on how you initially set up your project, because once you create some of these dedicated zones, you then have to really plan out how things are going to fan out from there. So it's very important to kind of really decide who your initial customer base is going to be so that you can serve that. And
Mm-hmm.
then you can start playing with different tools and systems and regions to spread that out. But it's hard to do, definitely until you have like 10,000 clients, or I'd say, you know, $5,000-10,000 of revenue of sales coming in. It's hard to justify that until you start growing a little bit.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, sounds good. Just in AWS, we are becoming very fond of it because it offers you like a lot of the solutions you need under one under one umbrella, and it has those options to pay as you scale. So
Mm-hmm.
basically, as your quota or like your limits are exceeding, then
Yep.
you actually scale according to it. So I think that makes it really powerful and
That's
related to
amazing.
yeah. So
Yeah. Azure, very similar technologies when it comes to it. Almost
mm,
everything AWS has, Azure also has. Um, Sometimes I lean toward, depends on the project which way I'm going. But if it's like general products, right, like wellness or accounting or general kind of SMBs, and it's not in like the confidentiality space, it's not in FiTech, and you don't have to worry about certificates as much, like, you know, ISO whatever certificates, right? There's a million of them. Then AWS is kind of like my preference because it's so easy,
yeah.
and it really opened up the whole world to the
Mhm.
cloud infrastructure.
Yes, and the market is moving towards making these solutions so easy that even people who have minimum technical knowledge can operate those.
Yep.
So it becomes easier for not you shouldn't be like that much technical to
Mm-hmm.
and deployments are getting very much, I would say, the systems that we see in AWS and stuff.
Yep.
Those are pretty straightforward, and
Yeah.
even if you have like a field deployment or if your load balancer is having some problems, you can just go there and you can reboot the sequence. Just
Yep.
you just select it and restart it and it starts to work. So I think things are getting pretty simple, and in the future they are going to be more lean towards having making these more accessible and easy for even non-technical persons. So moving to the next question. Sorry, Marish, to keep you waiting. Uh, he actually had like a question about how recent conflicts, especially like Iran versus Israel, did it like had any effect for like the undersea, the submerged cables and cloud service
Yeah.
delivery. So I personally think that there wasn't any damage to like the cables under the sea, but specifically in Iran, Israel, I'm not sure. There were some internet outages, but those
Mm-hmm.
were actually made by the government itself to protect their people.
There have been instances in the past where like a ship has cut a line with an anchor or something like that, and of course there's just natural, because a lot of those lines just sitting there on the bottom of the ocean, right?
Yeah.
They're not dug. You got to imagine they're not dug up. They're
Mm-hmm.
essentially just laid down by massive lines of fiber optics
Mm-hmm.
connecting different continents. So
Mm-hmm.
there's like fish can mess it up, or
Yeah.
you know, maybe a dolphin will go there and play with it, or a shark will attack like a lobster that's sitting on a line, right?
Yeah.
So there's natural things that happen, not just war. And but we did notice, like I think in like a year ago or something, there was a pretty serious internet outage due to kind of like a conflict zone anchors and stuff. Let's, you know, we all know also. I want to do a sidebar for a second. We all know that America didn't blow up that pipeline between Russia and Germany. We did not do that, right?
Yeah, but
That was the Russians that blew that up. But sometimes bad people do bad things, right? Just not to just oil, but also to internet structures.
yeah, yeah. And I personally think, I feel that it's outdated. We are living in 2025 and still dealing with cables and these thick fiber optic cables
There's
when they
nothing more efficient though.
yeah, but we are moving towards, I think, satellite, the Starlink and stuff, and
Yeah.
they get more, you can say, advanced in near future. Uh, I know that the cost to fix a satellite would be more than fixing a cable, but still, if you face like outages and a cable is cut, it's like $1 million kind of effort that you need to do to identify and then fix that specific cable.
Yeah, it's so interesting to me because we build the whole like all the economies essentially are built on doing things as cheap as possible.
Mhm.
And it's totally natural and in some ways required by law, right? To seek profit. So where where do you balance the ability to have a lot more redundancy, which would be sold as overcapacity, and where do you balance that resilience that you get by having extra lines going in different directions or in different routes?
Mhm.
Um, Satellite technology, I'm so curious how things are going to change. 5G moves information amazingly fast, right? So we know 6G coming up. Somebody tell me like what's the difference, the speed difference
Mhm.
expected for 6G is supposed to be. I can't remember. For some reason, like the top of my head, as I'm expecting like 10 times the speed,
Yeah.
right? So instead of downloading a 2-hour movie in
Mhm.
12 seconds, it's gonna just stream
Yeah.
it right to you because it'll be too fast.
Download it. Yeah. So yeah, they are getting pretty fast, and things are changing pretty fast too. And I have one more question. That's, I think we have answered that, but just to keep it, we could add more to it if we get more specific to it, like how these localized or like regional conflicts and downtimes are affecting global infrastructures. So let's assume we have like a downtime in Middle East, in Iran or like Israel.
Mhm.
How global infrastructures are like affected.
That's an interesting question, right? So let's just take that question and go one step further.
Mm-hmm.
Say any disruption that changes the natural flow of data
Mm-hmm.
and the correctness of data. So
Mm-hmm.
sometimes you have damage to information delivery systems, and it's not pure damage; it's disruption, it's corruption of data. And this corruption of data is sometimes the most difficult to deal with because sometimes it's hard to detect or the systems are not built for it. So, can you imagine like what damage you have to your systems if you were starting to get invalid data inside your systems that was feeding corruption to databases and to your live calls and to the processes, your business logic? That could be insane. But how, I guess, when you're looking at it, like somebody says to themselves, okay, this is in Iran, right? This conflict is in Israel. Uh, how in the world can it affect me?
Mm-hmm.
And the real answer is because we are so cheap on creating the minimum physical structure and so extreme on how to handle it if something goes poorly that we tend to overreact when we are thrown into trouble. So just like when COVID happened, we didn't have any problems with getting toilet paper to the stores. But
Yeah.
everybody ran out and bought all the toilet paper. All of a sudden, toilet paper is now going for $10,000 a roll. And, everybody has to have it, right? So the prices shot up, the demand shot up, people were hoarding. And all of a sudden, the need for certain things, which is not reasonable, becomes out of control. So now, because my business is important to me, and I know that if I lose a single key customer, I may literally be out of business. He'll go somewhere else. I'm going to do extreme things to try to get my business back online. I'm going to enforce my contract for that business level internet access, and I'm going to make it so that all the regular people can't do it. I'm going to try to put myself on the level of governments and these communications. So I'm going to tax these lines. Then the governments are going to be like, yeah, no, we have priority. The communication lines have to bump things around. They have to distribute things to deal with their communication needs requirements. And you can see how it's a insanely unreasonable domino effect. Just like, why in the hell would somebody pay $100 for a roll of toilet paper, right? But people are doing it. So these disruptions make businesses and people behave unreasonably.
Mm-hmm.
And if you don't plan ahead, then you will also find yourself, do I have to behave unreasonably? Or did I plan ahead enough to be able to ride this out and my system will take care of me? Did I take this loss ahead of time? And did I buy 200 rolls of toilet paper for all my employees and my friends and everything so that I have that when it was good times? Or did I say, no, you know what, 2 rolls of toilet paper is fine and now I can't find any? Right? How do you when do you plan your risk and when do you manage that? The foresight goes a long ways.
Yeah, and I had I remember someone asked me, or I like read it somewhere, that in terms of these transactions and stuff, these financial systems, could these conflicts affect in like a certain way that we might see increased fees and charges? Let's assume we might see increase in the fees that Stripe charge or like global payment processors or like any other services. Uh, is there a chance that they get inflated? Because to your example, towards like basic necessities like toilet paper or like other stuff that that people feel that they need to get in terms of to prepare for like different like worst case scenarios and situations. So how these like online systems and infrastructures could see an inflation or like could be overwhelmed. So we see that Walmarts and different stores got overwhelmed in response to this. We saw like big lines
Yep.
of stuff, and also a bit off topic, but the tariff thing, we saw like people being lined up outside different stores to actually buy those gadgets and stuff, being import being which is like imported from China and stuff. So these structures, how do you see that they could see inflation and stuff, and the systems could get like overwhelmed?
Okay. Wow, that was an amazing question. I'm writing it down. So let's work in the first order. So systems, financial systems, Stripe, the stock exchange, various stock exchanges, and financial institutions. I don't think they will inflate the prices for a couple of reasons. One is they are already kind of found that balance of the maximum they can charge and get away with without bringing in new competition. As soon as they go a little bit too extreme on this, then they're going to bring in new competition and they're going to have a lower quality but cheaper price. So they're going to lose that gate. So for a lot of these companies, that a lot of their gates is really their reputation, their pricing, and how they work with various risk levels, how they bring in AI, deal fraud. Now, they will have to come up with solutions that will help them mitigate these risks. And while that it's going to become more expensive in a small degree, we have systems with AI that we can use now, not to help build it really, but to help recognize those patterns and those risks to be able to adapt quicker to the changes. And we can start building those in ways that are going to help us be very responsive and save money in the long run. So by having better resilience and clear defined systems, there's a small upfront price to that, and they recap a lot of that cost over time through better systems and better operations.
Mm-hmm.
Now, the biggest challenge with these big financial institutions and the exchanges is the amount of data they have to push out quickly.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Yeah.
So it's that amazing, it's like having hundreds of thousands of interactions per second
Mhm.
kind of thing. That's a very difficult technologically to set up. Now, when you start distributing these systems, all of a sudden you find ways to make this easier to distribute the load, and you can do it cheaper by merging in these changes through merge trees. And while it's harder to do it up front, you're going to save yourself a lot of money because you're creating these solutions that are more less rigid, more flexible, and cheaper to run through electricity, through digital costs, all that stuff that you are paying a higher rate for because you're used to having that centralized power and the centralized systems. Now it's being reduced because information isn't traveling so far. You're using fewer routers. You're using less resources essentially by distributing the workload, and you're going to find yourself in better compliance, which probably is going to reduce your your political risks.
Mhm.
So
Yeah.
upfront, it's going to be more expensive. Big companies will recover quick. I hope they do overreact and give little guys a chance to get into the market.
Yeah, one thing that comes into my mind is basically when you are in conflict, you actually try to open all the fronts to make your enemy more, you can say, frustrated or like confused or like overwhelmed in a way. So cyber attacks, overwhelming the different systems that your rivals are using. So let's assume, in terms of payment processing as well and other things that applications, infrastructures that you have could be overwhelmed or like the like we do stress tests and stuff. So like a stress
Mhm.
test from your enemy could actually test your system to the limits and could actually create confusion among the public and
Mhm.
could actually also, I think, hinder day-to-day life and the stuff that we usually do and how we do it. So that creates more because how much used to we have now become to consistency. I remember like a decade or like at least 10 to 15 years back, I was pretty okay with the internet being down for 2 days. Now I can't even spend like a minute
Like 2
without.
minutes without it is a tragedy.
Yeah. So because
If your system goes down for 2 minutes, you're getting calls,
yeah, yeah,
and you're like, click refresh. They're like, no, I know it's down. You're like,
yeah.
wow, amazing.
Do like a hard refresh, try incognito.
Reset your computer. Like, no, I get like 100 calls just now. Everybody noticed. Everybody's
Mhm.
on it. The
Yeah.
it's a good point you talk about, and we don't actually talk about this much on our show, but
Mhm.
let's dive into this a little and then kind of circle back, right?
Mhm.
Because warfare between companies, especially in
Mhm.
e-commerce, is huge, right?
Mhm.
Uh,
Yeah.
right now, there's so many for every standard idea, like there's hundreds of competitors. And if you have a product that's making money, even like a 10% return, there's a lot of people trying to chew into that lunch because it doesn't take a lot of thought to go into some of these. Now, believe me, and I've seen this, if you have like a Shopify site, and I'm not making fun of Shopify, but I
Mhm.
have seen other companies that have custom solutions, and when one Shopify competitor has problems to various things, they will then go in and attack that company and bring their systems down as much as they can and cause as much chaos and expense to these
Mhm.
guys so that they can damage their long-term viability and to
Mhm.
get a lead on them. And sometimes they don't even do it for profitability. They just do it out of spite because they're sorry you're competing with these guys.
Mhm. Yeah.
So
Mhm. Yeah. Just
speaking of
to add,
acts of war.
yeah. Just to add a bit more to it, I think user experience is so much important that if I face like a bad user experience, I start to get a feeling that if this company or application or like even e-commerce store is like a scam or like is it legit,
Yeah.
because the standard in the bar is so high. The standard, and we talked about this with AI and stuff. The standard has become pretty much, I think the bar has risen up.
Yep.
And if you have like a bad user experience, as a customer, I have so many options that I will quickly shift, and I will also let other people know in my circle that I had like a very bad experience and you should not use it. There are so many other players in the market, a lot of competition, that you can quickly switch. If even I In terms of e-commerce, you will find thousands. In terms of applications, you could even get like dozens to even hundreds of competitors. So I think once you have like a bad user experience, people start to think twice before using that service again.
Yeah. Um, yeah. So you have that, and you have the two source. Let's say at least two sources. Actually, let's kind of list them real quick. So you have just bad user experience from poor UX design, right? And not doing research, not allowing feedback, right? Just not having that good communication platform. We nowadays have to have essentially some kind of AI support so that people can get quick responses
Mm-hmm.
when our online support isn't available. A lot of times now that's decent, right? You have that first line, people can kind of hold off, or you can kind of give yourself the padding to get a real person on the call if it requires that. Stripe does that now. They
Mm-hmm.
have the first line is AI, and then you can start working through the chat line to get real tech support. Now, that's just planning. That's thinking through it. That's the second. It goes to the second one of responding to changes in the customer expectation and changes in society and just the natural evolution of humanity. Then we have chaos that's introduced by saying all of a sudden, yeah, you're a US based company, but GitHub thinks that you are operated in Russia because you have a developer that happens to be in Ukraine, right?
Mm-hmm.
And all of a sudden, your whole private repo is locked out, and your stuff is unaccessible, right?
Mm-hmm.
Or you have ties in with various communication protocols. Vonage has been very active on disabling accounts, and there's all kinds of systems out there that are more or less aggressive, and you can instantly lose access to your APIs. So this is a user experience that is depreciated because your system doesn't know how to depreciate when you don't have full access to a certain service, or you haven't considered how to replace critical systems with alternatives. And you can do that more or less gracefully depending on how you plan that. So you can have fallbacks if performance gets degraded, or you can have fallbacks just in case you decide you don't like the way a system is run. Now, we've seen a good example is um, Google's AI Gemini 2.5. They've made some huge changes recently. They keep calling it 2.5, and some people's AI systems got broke because it changed at kind of like a low level because they were very used to the behavior, and the behavior changed, and now they had to go in and update the way their systems were working
Mm-hmm.
because they kind of tweaked it to work within that system.
Mm-hmm.
And Google just came in and updated it, made it better in a lot of ways, but not everybody felt that way, right? Because you made your system to respond a certain way, it stops responding this way. All of a sudden, what you made doesn't work because it's fragile. So you have to plan for those depreciations. Those are like three big user experience interruptions you have to be able to prepare for. And then, of course, there's tax, denial of service attacks. There is maybe somebody comes and takes over your domain or your DNS, right? Maybe somebody goes in and somehow destroys your email reputation, or goes in there and spoofs your email and starts responding to your client base, pretending to be you because you didn't configure your system, your registrations properly, and there's no way to validate that. There's a lot of things that kind of run down that line that you have to work on kind of over time, or to plan well ahead over time. And sometimes you just have to be able to respond and make sure you're observing things.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Uh, Yes, I agree to it. And before we actually wrap this session up, one thing that I think every nation around the world is working on is how to train AI
Mm.
in order to, it could be doing cyber attacks or actually preventing your systems from it, predicting those attacks in a way that you can save yourself, or even if you, in terms of warfare, how AI can be evolved in a way that it plays like a crucial role. And in terms of like attacks, I think spreading false information is like also I think it's like a major cyber attack.
It
and
is.
and
Have you?
yeah, I even faced it myself during the India-Pakistan conflict, where I could see AI-generated videos of different stuff like dog fights going on, which never took place. So
Mhm.
and all,
Right. Or was
yeah,
like over some tropical rainforest, and you're like, that's not here.
yeah, and also like soldiers getting arrested and stuff, and AI is getting like pretty much better at it. So in future, what do you think that how it's going to be more evolved in a way that it could play like a better or like a bigger role in terms of shaping these
Mm.
conflicts and like a very wider thing just to, that is pretty interesting that even, and that is like
Mhm.
related to a movie I recently watched, Mission Impossible. I there was like AI involved in actually create starting a launch sequence of like nuclear attacks all over the world. So these scenarios could be true if you know these attacks could be realistic in a way in future, not yet, but how do you see it? What kind of warfare do you think AI is capable of or could be capable of in future, and how it could be used to actually protect ourselves, our systems, or
Okay.
protect us
Yeah.
in a way. Yeah.
So from the humanities side, I think we're starting to become a lot more skeptical about what we see and what we believe. Now, there's still a group of people. There's always going to be a group of people, and sometimes on any given day, I am that group of people that believes in certain things and says, "I don't believe what they say," even though there's some evidence. Right? Like I believe that the Earth is round, but
Mm-hmm.
there's a lot of evidence that it's not. Right? So I'm kind of like, I'm not listening to your crap, right?
Mm-hmm.
I might be totally wrong. So there's examples. Gaza,
Yeah.
Ukraine, right? There's from these groups of people, America, you name it, right? India, Pakistan, uh, Iran, right? There's so much false information and weaponization of disinformation, and I'll say Russia too, right? A lot of disinformation in there and so much technology to make it look real that almost I'm like, if I'm not initially skeptical, I'm probably a sucker.
Mm-hmm.
So we're going to come in a time where this trust is something that really, really has to be earned.
Mm-hmm.
And how do you accommodate for being a human making mistakes while maintain this trust and this perfect image that people expect out of you? Um, it's a huge challenge because right now, you guys through this one conversation, there's enough of Daniyal and my voice for an AI to come and replicate us, and
Yeah.
with a few exceptions of like the word "live" and "live," right? You may not know if it's really us or not,
Yeah.
and almost there's systems that can just go without. Right? When I'm
Yeah.
looking on
Right.
YouTube,
All information is much easier because of
yeah,
this.
yeah,
Yeah.
it's totally easy. And it's scary because even on YouTube, when I'm listening to articles, I'm like, sometimes it takes me like 5 minutes before I'm like, this is 100% AI generated.
Yeah.
And it's really good. Right.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think there's any truth in here. Right. And I don't know if it's just meant to entertain me or not until you
Mm-hmm.
get towards the end of it.
Mm-hmm.
So we have both this sarcastic entertainment out there that's like, hey, this is like, if you read through the end of the comments, right on the very bottom, the guy says, yeah, this is a joke, right? He doesn't put it in the description, but he'll put it like at the very last comment. Yeah, no, this is all joke, guys. It's just made
Mhm.
for fun. None of this really happened. And you're like, it was so convincing.
Mhm.
Uh, how do you deal? How are we going to deal with this? I think is a big problem for YouTube right now, also. But
Yeah,
authenticity is going to become a like gold value, right?
yeah.
People are going to say how authentic is Coca-Cola? How authentic is Daniel Sultan? How
Yeah.
authentic is this country, right? How much can I rely on them? And they have to balance that with saying, wow, yes, I'm an American. I'm going to believe that everything that Biden and Trump tells me is 100% true, because I have to realize I don't care, because it will ruin my worldview if I don't accept that fact. Where do you go with that?
Mhm.
I don't know. So, how to deal with false information from AI systems?
That's
I
like
really don't know.
yeah, we have to think a lot about it, because AI is getting it's getting better, and I think that it would be more difficult for all these security checks and factors of authentication that we have inside applications with AI, pacing up so quickly. So in terms of authenticity, you know, anyone could use my or your voice, and even they are getting better with facial expression and the lip syncing. So anything could be spread, and if they want to, there might be things that coming up our way in a way that could make it easier to log in into our systems and perform all the authentication and stuff, using AI. So we uh, and that creates a gap, I think, to build systems that could actually refrain or restrict systems being hijacked or being you can say uh, you know duplicated, or like being attacked, or
Mhm.
like identifying the authenticity in a like a much better way.
Yeah, the so this is kind of a fun thing to talk about. Uh we're stepping on the conversation of security inside systems in a
Yeah.
way.
Yeah.
And we have the ability to create so much information to
Mhm.
overload a system that I suspect soon that even Stripe itself won't be able to tell what's real, what's fake, and
Yeah.
they will um, they will run the risk of closing down good companies
Mm-hmm.
and having to make the choice of, do they take losses, or how do they hand off that risk? And that's going to be hard, because if I'm relying on Stripe for my credit card processing,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm not keeping really good logs in my system, tracking attempts, tracking location, tracking all this stuff, that's going to borderline privacy rights of users, I may not catch the trends of hackers, of bots, and of people just trying to fish around the system to be more productive and to use the system better. I
Mm-hmm.
may not be able to tell the difference between a hacker and my favorite fan of my system.
Mm-hmm.
And we're going to have to start planning a lot of this into our systems earlier on.
Mm-hmm.
We're going to have to start learning how to do proof of concepts way faster. And we're going to have to start to realize that these systems out there are going to be smarter than us and
Mm-hmm.
find ways around whatever we built.
Mm-hmm.
So it's important for us to learn how to adapt and to respond quickly when things hit the fan.
Mm-hmm. True. And you actually, we were having a conversation, and you mentioned that ChatGPT is already smarter than any any person on the earth. So we cannot compete it, but we can use it in a way that it adds more value. So it was like a very good conversation, and we tried to follow the script. But whenever we are having a conversation, a lot of ideas and directions we always take
When
to.
I'm dealing with brilliant people like you, Rahima, and all of you guys, Fiza, I cannot keep on script. I just have to try to keep up.
Yeah, yeah, and we always enjoy these conversation. I hope that for the audience that it was just us trying to add, share our versions about the recent conflicts and situations going on, and from our experience and uh, you know the knowledge that we have, how application or like business owners can be better prepared in a way that they could
Mhm.
avoid these scenarios. And so it was like a very insightful conversation, and I really enjoyed it. I hope you enjoyed it too. So if you have any questions or if you would like to add anything before we wrap this up. uh,
Let me add one last comment. The because I like to kind of direct some of these discussions to the product owners and to the entrepreneurs and to the management. If you're always when you're a business owner and your job and everything's on the line, there's always something that's making you lose sleep or you wake up in the middle of the night, right? There's something in our consciousness that says this is something that's bothering me right now and I don't know what to do with it. If you found yourself getting in that position, this is what I encourage my clients to do. Write that down, right? And I'm not saying go into a dream journal, which is not a bad idea. But what I'm saying is when you got that bad feeling or that anxiety, write it down. Look at it and say, is this a warning that my consciousness is bringing up to me that we're now at this stage that we have to address this? Because you can have everything going good and be thinking like my team has it, my development team has it, but I'm getting this feeling, this inspiration or sensation, anxiety that this is going to be the next problem. Share that with your team and your developers. I ask my clients, hey, just throw it in a private message or throw it in some chat out there. And if it's not, and say, hey, Phil, I don't think this is worth paying for right now, but it's something that came up on my mind.
mhm.
And whoever
Yeah.
you're working with should love that because they're going to be like, okay, cool. I'm not going to put a price on it, but let's talk about it some that you can understand the problem. When you have that, bring it to your team or find a team that's able to help communicate with that for you and to understand it. You might have to do consultation. You might have to bring in some outside developers, or you might even have to educate your internal team on how to deal with those things. But trust your instincts and address the problem. Don't let it sit there and fester
Mhm.
because that might be that one little warning that's giving you that edge on your competition.
Yeah. And one thing, I really second your opinion of. I think that is something that keeps you up. It's something like an intuition that you get, that somehow intuition is very much powerful, and we do. I personally myself, I you can say ignore it in a way, but with time I have learned that is something very powerful. And uh, to like an ending note from my side, my to
Uh-huh.
just to in the direction of the intuition and things, is a quote from Steve Jobs, is like follow your heart and intuition, somehow it already knows what you truly want to become. So
Beautiful. Yeah. Go Steve Jobs. I'm going to say one last thing. If you can't figure out a good solution to a problem that you're scared about, find a way to track it. Find a way to start observing to see if it's something that should be brought to light or if it's something that's within the acceptable business range. Because not every problem needs to be solved.
yeah. Yes, that's like that is something you get to learn with experience, and you start to actually with experience, as you evolve through your life, you start to actually acknowledge things more, and you actually get better at them. So it was really nice having you, and as I mentioned, I enjoyed it a lot, and we will be having some more conversations in the next sessions. We would be actually going and doing some live screen shares and stuff in the next sessions.
Yeah.
Use
I'm
AI.
excited to show the guys how to tie in Zapier with some AI automations. This
Yeah,
is
and
going to be
also
something fun.
yeah, Zapier and it and automated workflows. That's pretty much interesting. How like daily tasks can be automated in just a few steps. So we will be definitely having those. Uh, we will be having doing screen shares and showing how it could be done and how it could actually add value, and also testing it limits at what to expect and what to not. So looking forward to it, and thank you so much for your time, and do take care of yourself, and for our audience, thank you so much for watching, and we will be back really soon.
Great. It's a pleasure, everybody. Stay safe, have fun, avoid all these wars. Go out there, be brave.